think about people who have their loved ones being wrongfully detained overseas. I cannot imagine the pain that they're going through and the grief that they're suffering, and how difficult it must be knowing that their loved one is going through such a tragic hardship. And so what I can say to the family and what I can say to the American public on behalf of this government is that we are working every day to try and bring Ryan Corbett home. We have continually pressed, including in our meetings with Taliban representatives, for the immediate and unconditional release of Ryan Corbett and other Americans detained in Afghanistan. We have made clear to the Taliban that these detentions are a significant obstacle to positive engagement, and we will continue to do that. We are using every lever we can to try to bring Ryan and these other wrongfully detained Americans home from Afghanistan. Yeah.
Matt, I don't know if you saw the report in the Politico 2 hours ago about the day after, Gaza, the day after, and the talks between the U.S. and regional partners. And according to the report, quoting U.S. official, that there's two ideas that gaining traction. One is to form a multinational task force, and the second one is to form a peacekeeping Palestinian force. But my question is, if you can answer to this, that is the Palestinian Authority included in these talks?
So I'm not going to speak to private diplomatic conversations or speak to what it sounds like are reported, anonymous comments from reported officials inside the United States government. What I will say is that what the United States has made clear, and the Secretary first made this clear in a speech in Tokyo last November, is that there are a few principles that we want to see apply to when the conflict ends. And one of those is that the Palestinian Authority should govern both Gaza and the West Bank. We want to see a united West Bank and Gaza that is governed by the Palestinian people through the Palestinian Authority. So we have engaged in talks with partner countries in the region, and we have engaged in talks with the Palestinian Authority about exactly what that might look like. And as you might imagine, there are a number of different proposals on the table. I won't go into those here for probably obvious reasons, but yes, we have engaged with both the Palestinian Authority and with countries in the region about the full panoply of post-conflict issues that Gaza will face.
You said before on this podium that countries in the region are committed to Gaza the day after, but they want something from Israel to be committed, for example, to the two-state solution or that. Israeli leadership still won't commit to this. Is there any update on your talk with the Israelis about that? Are you being able to push them beyond their public stance?
So I don't have any update to offer. Obviously, they've spoken to this a number of occasions, but the work that we have been doing with our Arab partners is to put together not just a kind of nebulous idea, but a concrete proposal of what this would look like, of what post-conflict governance would look like, both as it pertains to security in Gaza and the rebuilding and reconstruction of Gaza, and a political path forward for the Palestinian people that answers their very legitimate aspirations. As part of that, we have had discussions with Saudi Arabia about how to further integrate Israel with its neighbors, including with Saudi Arabia, and those are discussions that are ongoing as well. So that work continues, but at some point our goal is very much to have something to put forward, to put on the table for Israel to look at. And until we get to that point, and it's something we're working hard on every day, I don't want to sort of speculate about what decisions might look like.
Yeah, Matt, what role will the Palestinian Authority play in the operation of the pier in Gaza in 2 or 3 weeks?
So I would defer to the Pentagon to that question. They are the lead in the construction of this pier, and I would, for that sort of detail, I would defer to them.
But do you want the PA to play any role there?
Again, I would defer to the Pentagon for that question. The PA is not currently operating in Gaza. I know they've had employees that were in Gaza, but of course the PA has not been the the governing authority in Gaza for some time. So when it comes to any kind of concrete role in the operation of the pier and the delivery of humanitarian assistance, like I said, I'd have to defer to the Pentagon.
On this particular issue, it is said that the Israelis have agreed to actually provide security for the operation of the pier. Are you aware of that?
I've seen those reports. I don't have any confirmation of them. Yeah. Go ahead.
A couple of weeks ago, I asked you about, repeated instances of Israeli soldiers rifling through and parading, women's underwear, especially in light of ongoing allegations of sexual abuse against Israeli soldiers and allegations that they tortured and sexually abused UNRWA staffers in order to coerce false confessions. I'm wondering, since then, we've heard troubling details of these allegations, including soldiers sticking electrified rods up people's anuses. We've continued to see not single-digit, but now piles of photos and videos of soldiers parading through women's underwear. So I'm wondering, what are the updates on those instances we talked about a few weeks ago, and what is the update now that this keeps seemingly happening unabated?
So I would say whenever we see these reports, we make clear to the Israeli government what we make clear publicly, which is that they need to be investigated, and if appropriate, there needs to be accountability. And I would refer you to a comment that the IDF Advocate General, Major General Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi, who I believe is the chief investigator for the IDF, said several weeks ago in a letter when she wrote and said that she had encountered actions by IDF soldiers that do not meet IDF values, that deviate from orders and disciplinary boundaries, and have crossed the criminal threshold, causing strategic damage to Israel in the international area. These acts and statements on part of individuals who do represent the collective have no place in the IDF. And you saw the chief of staff of the IDF, Herzi Halevi, say, we must be careful not to use force where it is not required, to distinguish between a terrorist and who is not to take anything that is not ours, a souvenir or weapons, and not to film revenge videos. So the IDF has made very clear itself, just in the United States speaking, that they have seen inappropriate actions take place by IDF soldiers, and they need to be investigated, and those responsible need to be held accountable, and we would very much agree with that.
And then on the sexual abuse allegations, any sort of update on?
I don't have any update on those.
Okay.
On those, what I understand are ongoing investigations.
And then just on the assurances, earlier you said after receiving assurances from Israel that they're not violating humanitarian law, the U.S. so far has not seen proof of that. I'm wondering what these assurances look like, because we have all seen proof from the International Court of Justice, from the United Nations, and from footage, especially the past few weeks, over and over again, of Israel seemingly targeting civilians, hospitals, churches. Footage even yesterday showing Israeli forces seeming to execute unarmed Palestinians waving white flags. They're blocking aid to the point that the U.S. is trying to build a pier to deliver aid as if Israel is a belligerent and not an ally. So with all of this, how is Israel not violating humanitarian law? Are these assurances just Israel saying that they promised they're not, and they evidently continue to do so?
I spoke to this extensively on Monday and Tuesday, and I would encourage you to check the transcript. I'll do a little bit of it again, but I think I will spare everyone else here 15 or 20 minutes of me in vain on the national security memo again. But what I will say is we received assurances from the government of Israel that are consistent with the requirements of the national security memo. Now, but I think to your underlying question, we look at those assurances through a lens of the ongoing processes that we have to answer this very question. And we do have processes going on examining specific incidents in the conduct of the campaign, and those processes are ongoing. They've not reached a final determination at this point.
Thank you, Matt. I'm wondering if you have any reaction and comments about Hamas leader visit to Iran and what he said about Israel. He said that Israel is losing the international community support, and he took the UN security resolution as an evidence that Israel is losing support. Do you have any reaction and comment on that?
So I'm not going to respond broadly to something that a leader of Hamas said, but I would say with respect to the UN Security Council resolution, we've made very clear our position on that resolution, which is we think it is consistent with our longstanding position. It is consistent with our longstanding position that there ought to be a ceasefire linked to the release of hostages, and that's what we have believed Israel's position to be as well.
And do you have any sense that Israel is losing the international community support because they are not following the UN Security Council resolution?
Look, I think if you look around the world, there are a number of countries who have not supported Israel's action from the beginning. I think that's been pretty clear and not at all in dispute. And then there have been countries like the United States that have backed Israel's right to defend itself, while at times disagreeing with certain ways they went about this campaign, and calling on them to do more to both protect civilians and deliver increase the delivery of humanitarian assistance to those civilians.
Thank you, sir. According to some media reports, India has submitted the findings of the attempted murder of Sikh human rights lawyer Gurpratap Singh Pannu in New York. Could you share some details, please?
I'll have to get back to you. I have not seen those reports.
So after the attack in Moscow, officials are warning that the group has also set its sights on Western targets. How would you respond to the threat posed by ISIS?
That has set its sights on what?
So how you?
I missed the middle part there of the build up to the question.
So intelligence reports and officials are warning that the group has also set its sights on Western targets. How would you respond to the
Western
threat?
targets? Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I apologize. So we remain vigilant against the evolving threat posed by terrorist groups, including ISIS-K. We have maintained an unwavering focus on terrorism since the president took office 3 years ago, working both unilaterally and with our partners to successfully disrupt threats around the globe and degrade ISIS. In addition, in February 2022, operating on the president's orders, U.S. military forces successfully targeted Haji Abdullah, the leader of ISIS. Later that year, at the president's direction, the United States successfully included an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan that killed the emir of a different terrorist group, Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, and we will continue to work to hold ISIS accountable for its actions and prevent terrorist attacks against the United States and other Western countries.
So the main hideouts of these terrorist groups are based in Afghanistan, and the United States always said that it will continue to have the ability to target terrorists in Afghanistan who pose a threat to American interest. So is there any action expected?
So we remain committed to ensuring that Afghanistan can never again be a launching pad for terrorism, and we continue to push the Taliban to fulfill all of their counterterrorism commitments to the international community. We have made clear to the Taliban that it is their responsibility to ensure that they give no safe haven to terrorists, whether it be Al-Qaeda or ISIS-K or any other terrorist organization. And we remain vigilant against the evolving threat of these terrorist groups. And our global coalition to defeat ISIS and the C5+1 help intensify our efforts to monitor terrorist threats from the region and prevent terrorists' ability to raise funds, travel, and spread propaganda. Sean, go ahead.
Sure. A couple other issues. Venezuela. So you issued a statement, I believe last night on this, on the opposition struggles to field a candidate against Maduro. Are you under the impression that this violates the understandings in Barbados, the Norwegian brokered understandings, and what does this mean about a potential snapback of sanctions?
So I would say that we remain deeply concerned, and it's not just the United States that's deeply concerned, it's our regional partners who share this concern about decisions by the Venezuelan National Electoral Council to prevent opposition parties from registering candidates for the upcoming presidential election. We are going to continue to make clear to Maduro and his representatives that there needs to be, they need to ensure international observer access. They need to end the jailing and harassment of civil society members, and they need to allow a free and fair election. And then, as we have made clear, actions that run counter to the letter and the spirit of the Barbados Agreement will have consequences. We've spoken to that. We've spoken to the fact that there's a general license that expires next month. I'm not going to make any determinations from here about how about what decision we will take then, but we have been very clear with with Maduro and his representatives about what we expect them to take and what the consequences could be if they don't.
Just a brief follow-up, not to put words in your mouth, but you're saying that there's no determination. Yeah, there's no determination from here as of now what decision they'll take. Is there still time, basically? I mean, could they still? Is there still time?
So the only thing I'll say is we've made clear that that general license with respect to oil expires in April, and you heard us say some months ago that that's an important date to watch. We allowed another general license to expire and not be renewed. I think it was one for gold, and there's a big one coming up for oil, and that continues to be an important date. And we're going to be watching the Maduro's actions and making determinations about how we will proceed.
Just a couple more. don't know if there's something you're following, but tensions between Colombia and Argentina.
I have been following that.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, great. That makes two of us.
It's not the same as saying I'm going to have anything to say about it.
Right,
I haven't been
wasn't
following it.
Right, I wasn't counting on that. But what do you make of it? I mean, if I understand the chronology, the president of Argentina, President Milei, said that President Petro is quite a terrorist, and Colombia has expelled diplomats. Has the U.S. has friendly relations with both countries? Has the U.S. been dealing at all with the terrorists?
So I think I'm going to stay out of this one. This is ultimately an issue between Colombia and Argentina. I will say that we, as you noted, maintain strong relations with both of them, and we support continued dialogue and diplomatic relations between both sides. But as to this specific dispute, I think I will refrain from.
And you're going to stay out of the actual remarks?
Yes, I think that would be wise.
Just more before I yield. Do you have anything more to say about Niger after yesterday? Anything more?
No, it's something that we continue to work on, and we continue to engage with the CNSP, but I don't have an update.
Thanks, Matt. Can you give us any indication or awareness of of Haiti's transitional presidential council being closer to formation? I believe 8 members have been chosen of what's supposed to be a 9-member council, and any update on U.S. plans for further evacuations of Americans from Haiti?
So on the first, you may have seen that they issued a statement yesterday. We were encouraged to see the Transitional Presidential Council release its first statement. We hope that the council will continue to work to take the steps they outlined in that statement, including finalizing their organization and operation, appointing an interim prime minister, and taking steps to restore order to Haiti. Ultimately, as we've said, these are decisions for Haitians to make. We will continue to work with CARICOM and our partners in the region to offer our support for them as they go through this process. And then with respect to facilitating the departure of American citizens, let me first give you an update on the numbers. We now have successfully evacuated or facilitated the departure of somewhere around 450 U.S. citizens since March 17th. That includes over 300 that have departed Port-au-Prince and almost 100 from Cap Haitian. There are helicopters that are going today from Port-au-Prince to Santo Domingo, and we continue to explore other alternatives and other options to get American citizens out of Haiti, but I don't have any announcements today. But we're going to continue to work on that and may have more to say tomorrow or over the weekend.
Very much, Matt. My first question is about Congress had asked the Assistant Secretary Donald Lu to send the Pakistani U.S. ambassador in Pakistan, Mr. Bloom, to meet Imran Khan. Any update when he's meeting?
Congress asked? Who in Congress?
You know the congressional hearing where Mr. Donald Lu had appeared?
I remember that, yeah. Usually Congress means like an act of Congress. Do you mean like a member of Congress? Or?
Yes. A couple of members of Congress had asked the Assistant Secretary that the U.S. ambassador should go and meet Imran Khan in jail to see how he is, what's his situation.
I don't have any updates on meetings by the ambassador.
Okay, just one more thing. 6,000 scholarships each year the U.S. gives to Pakistani students, and not a single complaint has ever been seen. All students are taken on merit. It's amazing. But since the lady who you have called Milestone, because I carry these values from the high school and university here from the U.S., so that's why I do get upset at times when you use terms like milestone for corrupt people. This principal in Pakistan.
Sorry to upset you.
Yes, it does. Michael Thompson, a principal at a university, a college in Lahore, where the milestone lady that you call is the chief minister there. He just resigned there because one of her favorite tried to waive off his son's tuition fee. The principal, an Australian principal working in Lahore. Isn't this shameful? And should you be calling milestone to people?
I could not possibly have a comment on that situation. Go ahead, in the back. I'll come to you next. In the back.
Okay.
Behind you. Sorry, I'll come to you.
Okay.
Back of the room. You're half.
Okay. The United States approval of limited operation in Rafah acts as a green light for Israel to start military operation in Rafah. This is seen as a step back in the U.S. stance, which affecting its image and credibility. What's your comment, please?
I think that's a bit of a mischaracterization of what we said with respect to Rafa. First of all, we have always made clear that we support Israel's right to hold Hamas accountable and its right to take the fight to Hamas operatives inside Gaza, including in Rafa. But what we have said is that we think that there is a better way to do that than the full-scale operation that Israel has said it's contemplating, and we look forward to having a conversation in the coming days with Israel to lay out what those options could look like and what that better path could look like. We have always made clear, though, that whatever kind of military operation that Israel conducts, whether it be in Rafa, whether it be in Khan Yunis, or whether it be anywhere else, needs to take into account the civilian population and minimize civilian harm to the population in those communities.
Excuse me, there is a guarantee that civilian will not affected, will not dangerous, their life?
Look, I think it's hard. I mean, it's obviously in any war impossible to make a guarantee. What we want to see is civilian harm minimized to the maximum extent possible, and so that means designing military campaigns around protecting civilians first. That's one thing the Secretary has made clear in his conversations with the government of Israel that they ought to do. And at the same time, it's a separate issue, but it's very much connected, making sure that they do everything to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian assistance so that those civilians who do remain in Rafa or anywhere else inside Gaza have access to food and water and medicine and shelter that they need to survive in what is obviously a very difficult situation in the middle of an open war.
Okay, excuse me. I want to ask you about the mission of the American military delegation to Tel Aviv, whether as an alternative of visit of the Israeli military delegation to Washington, D.C., and what the ideas they carry. And there is headlines for this delegation.
So, with respect to a military delegation, I think my colleagues at the Pentagon are briefing in an hour, a little over an hour, and I would encourage you to submit that question to them. They should speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
For the Italian television. Oops. So that's my question. United States, NATO under President Biden got more strong, and Europe is happy about it. But there are talks in Europe. Different government would like to create an European force that can support NATO and the U.S. So what would it be the answer from the U.S., from the State Department, if Europe would create their own European forces to protect Europe?
So I don't want to speculate. We will continue to work with our European partners. But as you made clear in I think the lead into your question, we have been very clear about the United States' commitment to NATO, the United States' commitment to our transatlantic alliance, the United States' commitment to all of our allies in Europe, and we think it's important that NATO be bolstered and expanded, as we have seen happen with the increase in 2 members in the last year or so.
Yeah, can I ask another question?
Yeah.
So they're not against NATO. That actually this force would make it NATO stronger. But the other question would be. Does the U.S. believe that Europe should be more active to protect themselves? Let's say also helping more Ukraine or be more active in the Mediterranean with the Middle East, or should be done always together with the U.S.?
So I think that's an incredibly broad question that's hard to answer in the time
what can you say?
I have shortly here. I would say that we want to work together with our European allies, but that doesn't mean that they can't do things outside of cooperation with the United States. But we share values and interests with those countries, and we work together. And sometimes they do things separately, but that pursue our common goals. And we, of course, support that.
Thank you.
So it's about a dozen CEOs from American businessmen met with Xi Jinping yesterday. So the CCP has been, notorious for linking silence with human rights abuses on a trade relationship. How does the United States ensure that human rights is the foundation of these trade relationships with China?
So I will say that in all of our meetings with officials from the PRC, we make clear where we have concerns about China's human rights practices. We raise them consistently. That includes the Secretary when he has met with his counterparts, and that includes other officials from the U.S. government. Make very clear what we think about human rights in China and where we have deep concerns.
And also the CCP is banning Intel and AMD sales, their chips. How does the U.S. protect American companies in this regard doing business with China?
Let me take that one back and get you an answer.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Coming back to the Moscow attack, the New York Times reported today that the United States, it did not provide Moscow with all the information it had about the threat of the attack because it didn't want to disclose its sources and methods. Do you believe the warning Washington provided to Moscow contained all the details about the attack?
So I'm not going to speak to intelligence information from here. I think I've always made that pretty clear. But what I'll say is that we provided clear, detailed information to Russian authorities about terrorist threats against large gatherings and concerts, notable word, in Moscow. And unfortunately, I have to leave it at that.
One more question. There are media reports in Russia and Ukraine that Victoria Nuland had to resign because of an imminent investigation about her activity in Ukraine since 2014. Do you have anything on that?
That is absolutely false. And I know Toria has long been a boogeyman for the Russian government. It's not the first time they've propagated disinformation against her. I guess I might have thought it would stop with her departure from the State Department, but maybe I'm surprised that it hasn't. No, that is absolutely false. And I think with that, we'll wrap for today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.